Okay. It's 5 o'clock on Thursday, October 24th. I'm going to call to order the October meeting of the Culver Redevelopment Commission, and let's start with the roll call. Okay.
Mr. Seiler.
Here.
Ms. Monroe. Here. Jones here. Ms. Ricciardi.
Here.
Mr. Oosterbaum.
Here.
And Ms. Schuman at that.
All right. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next thing on the agenda would be approval of the minutes from our September 26th meeting. Sally put together those for us, circulated. We all got a look. I'm assuming you got comments back, or
I got nothing.
you got nothing. All right. Well, in that case, does anybody have?
Good news.
Yeah, anybody have any? Oh, well, I said.
You
some.
said, yeah,
Okay,
you said
all
it
right.
was good.
Well, I don't count though, I guess so.
No changes, no corrections.
All right. Does anybody have any changes or corrections for Sally and Elizabeth? All right. Thank you, Jenny. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All right. No further discussion then. All in favor of approving the minutes as presented for the September 26, 24 meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. All right, we'll go to new business. Presentation to the overlapping financial districts. This is always fun for us, right? Because we get to talk to you about TIFs. You know, we love, I like to say we love to talk TIF around here. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Karen to put the slideshow up and we'll walk through a few, I don't know, 7 or so slides. I've tried to anticipate any questions, but I'm sure I've missed a few. But you may want to wait kind of toward the end, and then anything you got, we'd love to hear. Okay. So presentation of the overlapping taxing units. Let's find out who those are. On the next slide. I'm moving faster than the slide show is. There they are. Okay, so.
Moving slowly.
Right. So who are these overlapping taxing units? Well, the county, Marshall County, the township, Union Township, the Culver Community Schools, the library, the town, of course, of Culver, and then the Solid Waste Management District are all considered overlapping taxing units. Where do we think our revenues are going to be for next year? I thought that'd probably be a good place to start. You know, how big is the bread box kind of things? Estimate of revenues coming out of our tax increment financing areas for 2025 at the moment is $745,000. Okay, Karen, next. So, and another question is, geez, how long do these TIF districts go? They go for a long time. And are we coming up toward the end of any of them? And the answer is no. So the original TIF district is going to expire in 2034. That's been extended a couple of times so there's an expansion area that would go to 38, another expansion area that would go to 2040. The second tax increment financing district that was established has a shelf life through 2036. And then we just had a couple of new tax increment financing districts established in connection with the Dunes project, one for the commercial area, meaning the apartments, and the other for the residences that will expire in 2049 for the commercial, and the residential doesn't last as long. That goes only till 2044. Thank you, Karen. So this is really hard to read. Sorry about that. I could have broke this up into a few slides, but I wanted to give everyone a sense as to where has the money been going over time. And so these are just kind of like big categories that the CRC, often in conjunction with the town, has supported projects around here. There is a bond for the water system. We have provided support to the water plant. We have supported NDOT projects related to Stellar, those being a couple of trail projects here in town. The Lake Max Trail and the Jefferson Street Trail are on our current working list. Facade grants, we budget about 90,000 a year towards facade grants. That's been pretty consistent for a couple, 3 years now. We've supported the Visitor Center for their advertising and also for attracting tourists to the events around town. We don't actually pay for the Visitor Center operations, but rather the advertising budget that they use to attract and advertise their events. There have been improvements in our Main Street that have been supported by the Redevelopment Commission, as well as we have helped the Main Street organization better understand who lives here full-time, who lives here part-time, and this changing demographic that involves remote workers. And is there something we can do to help advantage Culver by taking advantage of that phenomenon, which is still being studied by Main Street, and we've helped them support that. There's been a whole bunch of park projects, right? The lodge, the playground, Cavalier Park. Ginny can rattle off a half dozen more, I'm sure, but we'll let that go at that for now. See, that's unknown, right? That's a thing, right? Right. We're going to get those too, right?
It's not the baby.
No. Probably my agent in Hollywood. The safety and protection, we have supported the purchase of a police car and also the purchase of a fire truck, right? I think came through the scene and an ambulance. All right. So, so that has been a part of our work. Also, we've had some help or underwriting work associated with grant administration, professional fees. And then broadband was a big investment for us, $500,000 last year. And then housing projects. We've supported Sand Hill, the paddocks, and of course, most recently, the dunes. So that just kind of gives you a sense. It's a very broad, area that we've been involved in over the years, and a lot of different places that this tax money has gone, and we feel has gone to improve the overall environment for the town here. Next slide, please. And you can see how our expenditures kind of go. That yellow line is kind of flat, 550, 650 a year. Those are the revenues that come in. I told you earlier, next year, we think our revenues are going to be 750. That's going to be a significant increase over what we have been getting year over year. But you can see our spending kind of goes up and down, right? It's project related, and it doesn't always, we start to run out of money. We've got to spend less. That's that end of the line, right? Where we're kind of taking this year off from big investments. Next slide. And you can see what that does to our end of the year balances. We've got kind of this little less trend line over time. And it's, and we're kind of now in the stage where we're starting to build that line the other direction by probably underspending our budget this year. And let's talk about that next. Our team here said we would spend $559,433. It's kind of a pretty specific number, but that was what the revenue anticipation was. And we thought whatever we wind up the year with, that'll be kind of our rainy day. We thought that we'd end the year around 400,000 in funds, and we didn't really want to wind up with less than that in the bank for, emergencies or rainy days. So we said, well, we can't spend more than what we bring in this year. There was already $387,000 committed. 200,000 of that was bonds, 30,000 to support the water. That also is a bond, I believe. And then trails, the trail extension was committed for almost 150,000, and then some Christmas decorations. And that left us 170,000 approximately that we could spend that wasn't already committed out of that initial 550 $9,000 budget. By the end of August, we've spent about 80,000 of that. We've got 90,000 remaining. And of the money that we spent, most of it went to facade grants, about 50,000 to facade grants so far this year. We've supported the visitor center advertising and event support for 26,000. We bought an easement or paid for an easement that's associated with the Dunes project for 2,500, and we've incurred professional fees of about 3,000. So that's our spending year to date. We think we're going to get more requests for facade grants and some other things before the year is out, but we probably will come out ahead of that spending number, and we'll be adding to our overall reserve by year end. Thanks, Karen. So what's our top line then? If we wind up there, so our balance in the bank right now is 802,000. We take away what we're going to pay for September in claims, and then what we have committed that haven't paid for the current year. And then we add what we think our revenue is going to be next year. That's 745, and that winds up to $1,375,000. So if we spent $1,375,000 next year, we'll be broke. But that is the total number that we expect to wind up or begin the year with. If we take away, I should say, if we take away the things that we're already committed to next year, there's about 80,000 in bonds. That really gives us $1,292,000 that we could invest with. Thanks, Karen. So what are our plans long term for these TIF areas and how to benefit those TIF areas? And so we've talked about the projects that we have worked on: infrastructure, retail business support, the facade grants, improving the quality of place, parks. We tried to attract remote workers. By the way, what we found out is they need places to live. We don't have a lot of places to live around here. Hopefully with the Dunes, we can attract more of those remote workers. We've supported the tourism economy, and we've supported those bodies that are working for us on a regional basis for planning. And we've supported housing projects. Currently under discussion amongst this group as we're putting together a spending plan for next year, which we have due by December 1st, would be revitalization of Main Street. And then what do we do with that, what we call the entertainment district, or the comprehensive plan calls the entertainment district. You might know it as Uptown, or where the Lake House Grill is, that area uptown. So I threw in this next slide, which none of my team here has looked at yet. And it may indicate that it's more subtle than it is, but I just wanted to give you a sense as to all the things. We did a comprehensive plan, and there are so many initiatives in there, and we're going to go through them later tonight, if you care to stick around for that. But I pulled out a few of them, and just to give you a sense as to, okay, we've got $1.2 million we can spend. What are the things we could invest in, and what are the choices we're going to have to make with that money? So there's a need for a shared vision for Main Street and Uptown. How are we going to fill those vacant buildings, and how are we going to improve that Main Street economy? We need to get aligned around a vision. We need to get a plan for what are we going to do about it in the next year, the next 3 years, the next 5 years. That's going to cost some money for us to figure out, and that could be a priority for us to help do next year. The park has had a lot of things improved over time, but there's still things to go, right? We don't have restrooms there. We don't have the electrical we'd like to have. We don't have a sound system that we'd like to have in that park. That could be an area that would justify some investment for us. The facade grant support would likely be something that this team would continue to want to do, but that's again a decision to be made as part of the spending plan. We would like to think that we could get ahead of the next round for Ready. The Ready grant program is now going through phase 2. if there is a phase 3, would be very beneficial if we have projects that are ready to go, right? That we could just put into that hopper rather than trying to pull it together in what are generally compressed timeframes that wind up getting extended anyway. But so working on those types of projects, finding them, figuring out the financing that could work, finding the private public partnerships that could make some of those things go. Think about redoing the theater, right? Think about redoing the bank building on Main Street. Those kind of things would fit into ready type projects. More housing maybe. Working on blighted areas, vacant lots in town, doing infill projects. Those are all things that the Ready program would support along with us if we had viable projects. Okay, so I'm going to quit there. I think I've beat that horse pretty good.
I think one potential priority that we can think through in the next couple of months that we're in this sort of planning for what we're spending phase. And I know we have to turn in our report by a certain time, but I was thinking about, I love the investment on Main Street. Obviously, we've discussed that a lot. But I was also thinking about the assets at the school and how the stellar investment we made to the soccer fields, playground, baseball field, that whole project vastly improved a school asset. And as I've been to some communities, small towns and larger cities, obviously, that have better sports complex assets. And some of them are quite large, obviously, like Westfield, and Culver does not compete with the Westfield. But as we improve our schools assets, that also attracts people to living in Culver, whether it's full-time or as a visitor. It's something I've been thinking about. That one project vastly improved that school asset, but also it provides a trail for people. The senior center folks come out, watch baseball games now. We never had that before. There's concession stand there now that we didn't have before. So we've enabled the school to do more with what they have. And I know we invest in the school periodically as a partner and also as part of our TIF spend. And I hadn't thought a lot about what we've done since that stellar project. It's almost, we've done some investment at the baseball fields when Eric Larson came in. But I think we need to still think about that some more. Just as a
Great. Thank you.
which ties into our comp plan a bit with quality of life and quality of place. Some of these other priorities.
There's a lot of slides there with a lot of bullets. I'm trying to remember if there's one about the schools in there, and it may
How
not
many
be.
more do
So
we have?
yeah, well, thank you for making sure it's on the radar. Okay, so we like to think the positive impacts of of spending the TIP dollars the way that we have is that we've increased or helped increase the retail sales around town. We've attracted more visitors. We've attracted more of the remote workforce. I think there's a lot of, we can do more in all of those areas. The question often comes up and says, okay, well, geez, what would happen if you guys just got rid of the TIF districts? From a tax standpoint, would the dollars collected for taxes go down? And the answer is no, and it's not really that well understood. Now, individually, your tax bill may go down a little bit. But when there's maximum levies, like the county is, required to not levy more than X% more than they did the year before. Same with the town, same with the school, I think. Yeah. So, and they're all there. They're all at the maximum levy. They can't get more than they're already getting. So what would happen is if we dissolve these TIFs, the dollars collected by those entities would remain the same. It's just how they are collected. and from whom they are collected would change slightly. There would be more valuation into the pool that they tax from. So individuals within that pool would see their rates go down. But that would leave us no dollars for the types of investments that we've made, like in our parks and in our lodge and in our trails, in our facades. And then we would then have to go to the county or go to the townships and ask them for that kind of support here in Culver. And that's why these TIP districts exist, is to help us do that, because we're local and we understand the needs better. So that's the argument for these TIPs, and that's how the financial works for it. It gives us dollars that actually otherwise wouldn't be being collected in order to make these types of investments. And as long as we're good stewards, it makes sense, right? And you guys are the ones that arbitrate that for us. That's why we like to make these presentations to you and hear you. Let us know how we're doing. There's two things I want to give you from a numbers standpoint, 2 slides here, and then I think we're done, actually. So the valuations here, 41 million is the incremental valuation. In other words, what's used to get the money into the TIFs. That produced in last year, calendar year 2023, $667,000, 159 in revenue to us. And then I've taken that $667,000 and I've allocated it based on the tax rates. So you can see just about how much of those dollars, using the tax rate for my overlapping taxing district, is represented by that. So the township, about $2,700. The schools, about $222,000. The town, about $259,000. The county, about $143,000. The library, about $33,000. And the solid waste district, about $5,000. Now that's based on 41 million of assessed value. Now, if we go to the next slide and we look, what are the assessed values this year? And they just came out, and we've got them at 45,182,000. That's about 10% higher than they were 2 years ago of the 41 million. And we would expect about 10% more in revenue. So we've got about a $745,000 total. That's the number I gave you earlier. Is what our top line for next year is going to be. And that would be the breakdown by taxing unit. And that's it. Well, have I, but no one felt completely asleep, but I know that wasn't the most interesting stuff. I'm going to open the floor to any questions or discussions. Let me ask the team first if you have any thoughts or questions or comments.
How about, basically we intend to continue supporting the infrastructure and Main Street and other projects.
And I think some people would question where a school may lose out with TIF being in a community. But if you look at the investment CRC made in housing at Sand Hill and the paddocks, so you end up getting, say, 25 kids from that housing, which is about what we had. And if it's, I don't know what the state allocates per kid now, could be around 8,000. So that money follows the kid. So if we've added 25 kids to school population, there's 200,000 in revenue also added with those kids. And that's just from that one project. The Dunes could add another 50 kids, for example, adding potentially 400,000 to the school revenue. So I look at that as it could benefit. And then we've invested in capital improvements over there. That allows them to use their dollars for capital improvements that, they don't necessarily, that the improvements that they might not otherwise do, because they don't have to be in crisis mode if we're making investment too. But they're just interesting concept, state of Indiana, how that works.
I don't want to speak for Karen Schuman, but if she was here, I think she would say that she's been supportive all along. Our work and investments in the housing particularly.
And it's
Yeah.
probably why the state allows a school member or someone from the school body to sit as a non-voting member on CRC to have influence that way, I suppose.
Any thoughts, input? Wow, okay. Then let's move on. Thank you very much. We'll close that discussion. Amber, you're on.
Oh.
Next on the agenda is Amber.
And Hannah will be joining me. So I'm now just a board member for the Culver and Lake Maxinkuckee Visitor Center.
Could you introduce yourself,
Yes,
please?
my name is Amber Cowell, board member for the Culver and Lake Maxinkuckee Visitor Center. And this is Hannah Croy, our new executive director. So I'll have Hannah kind of kick it off. We're here today for our 2025 funding request.
Yeah, so I have printed copies for the projects part of that for you guys.
Yes.
Hold off, Mike.
I am
Smiling
not
at you.
used to it.
Whatever
Thank
that was.
Still not used to it.
I was
We'll
gonna-
get there.
Maybe you kept it.
It was a little stressful, but we got it done.
Okay,
So Hannah today will be presenting on behalf of like the projects. So all the projects we plan or would like to do for 2025. And then I will be talking about the events, so the funding, advertising, print materials, that sort of thing specifically. So Hannah will talk about the
Absolutely.
Or the projects, sorry.
So the biggest question, we did not increase for projects this year. So I know that might be one of the top questions there. So that did not change. Honestly, a lot of the asks from last year, I'm what, 6 weeks into this
Yeah.
now?
We're
So
doing-
Amber, yeah.
we're simplifying it.
Yeah, so a lot of that stuff did not change when I was looking at, comparing 24 to 25. So, any questions on that? We didn't go up. The videos, photography, they're not raising their prices from what we've been told. So those were able to stay the same. So for the 2024 winter review, first off is Winterfest. Winterfest, we have Lake Fest, Fall Fest, the holiday weekend. We did do paint out this year. That is the biannual event. So happened this year. It'll happen again in 2026. And then we did a travel IN magazines submission. We have the pictures and the videos that we do receive from a photographer and videographer that come in for each of those events that we're able to share out to attract more people. There, if you've seen the paint out ones, they had a lot of hits on social media and websites. So those have really been well received. We had the event magnets, attended the events. I think the Academy's registration, this was the first year in quite a while.
Yeah.
That,
A lot of businesses were really happy that we were able to get back into the Culver Academy's registration. And then not only that, we were able to put our print materials that CRC actually funds. I was able to touch base with the parent rep, Julie Barger. She allowed us to put our print materials in every single new parent welcome bag. So that was really cool. We collaborated with all the businesses. We did coupons with all of them. That was one thing we inserted in our event magnet, and our brochures were in every single parent bag. So that was exciting as well.
and then those coupons and print materials were also given out to all of the artists that came for paint out. They each got a little goodie bag that had the business card in it and those coupons and any business advertisements that we had as well. So another way to get that out. And then the triathlon as well. We were able to hand out promo items to them. Obviously that brings, I was not here that weekend, but I heard the ground rumble that weekend. So a lot of people, my husband said it took him a long time to get back into town after he left that day. So a lot of people come in for that. Again, the Lakes magazine, that's a pretty popular one. So we'll keep that, the 12 monthly advertisements in there, the town video production. So that is with Chuck, is it Chuck Video? Is that his actual?
Chuck
just Chuck?
Videography, that's it.
Okay.
Chuck Fry is
I just know him as
his
Chuck.
name.
So, yeah.
Chuck.
So he did the paint out there. Obviously, it's a link. You can't click the paper, but there is the video to the paint out that he did this year. And I believe he is coming this weekend for Fall Fest as well. So you will see him if you see someone running around with a video camera, that's what it's for. And then we'll be able to push that out so that people can kind of see Fall Fest weekend and what happens there. For the welcome bags, hoping to get into the registration again next year. Anything else that we would need for that will include print materials, magnets, all that good stuff, because we'll obviously continue the event magnets. Those were well received. I know I have mine on my refrigerator.
Definitely the most popular thing
Yeah.
we do.
And then, so that's project 3, and then moving on to project 4, obviously the event magnets. So the 2024 sample of that is right, so you're right there. There, you will probably on TGL, probably most likely on the website, social media, there will be a form coming up for people to submit for those events. One thing Amber did tell me is I'll get a lot of them, and we have to kind of figure out which ones to put on there that will benefit the community more. So that will be coming up.
Good problem to have.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I remember, I think I kept putting stuff in for the school and I'm like, there's that many. So, yeah, so that'll be fun to get out then for 2025, very well received. So $2,000 for that, $1,100 for the staycation itinerary. I don't know, I couldn't find one for last year to put the sample in there. But the
Yeah, I
2023,
just highlighted every single
Yeah.
event. Those are great because they essentially go across all of Indiana into like their visitor bureaus. And if you're going to a stop, like if you're driving, what are those called? A rest stop, there we go. They're totally free. So anyone can grab them at those locations. We got a ton. I distributed those out all across Marshall County. We used it this past year to highlight our events, and they work really well with us on it, on personalizing it to whatever we want to do. The year before we did a weekend, a family vacation. Like we're deciding now how we want to frame that for 2025, but
and a lot of that stuff brings in, I know a couple of years ago, I did one for, Karen Schumann actually sent it to me and said, hey, write this, for a day or I think a half day or something like that.
That's right.
So that helps people see breakfast to dinner, after dinner, what's going on, what can we do in Culver, what brings us to town. So, so that'll be something that we'll obviously continue. The events photography, there's some event, Lake Fest Parade down there. I do keep coach cheerleading, so I had to stick that. That's my favorite picture they took all weekend of my girls in the parade, and the paint out. So amazing photography, that we have there. So we did keep that on there. You can, cmcimages.com. Is where you can also see a lot of past images on the Facebook page, Instagram, all that good stuff, as well as samples. And then for number 7, we have the visitor guide brochure, obviously the pamphlet that is handed out all over the place in our welcome bags, in the paint out bags, those sorts of things. So that will highlight Culver and here, I don't know, anyway. So all those together come to $23,850 for all of those 7 projects total for the year of 2025, which again is the same amount as last year. So we did not increase that. So.
Right. You guys don't have any questions?
Quick question, I can't remember, when you guys publish the magnets, what time of year do you get those printed?
So last year we got our hands on them in February.
Okay.
Yeah.
I plan to send them to print in January.
Yeah, we're trying really hard to like do it earlier. I think the year before that it was March, so we're trying to essentially send them. You have to like send them out in December if we wanted them, but people have to get back to us about when their dates are. So we're kind of strapped there. So hopefully, I got it out before Winterfest, but that was the first event I was having to do.
And you will see on the very back there. So like Fall Fest last year when I met with Andrea, she's like late October.
I know.
So like nailing down those dates.
Like people, if you're asking somebody in December, when you want 2025 December's event to be.
Probably a good thing, you're helping them get their planning in.
Yeah,
we can't put late October on a magnet.
Yeah.
So.
We actually help people kind of figure out like the triathlon. We were able to put Dana that weekend's this. Oh, okay, so it actually allows us to be a little bit more
tie events together.
like let's be intentional about when we do things.
Yeah. I'm asking too, because I oversee some of the conservancy district stuff, and we're planning on doing a mailing. And we're putting a magnet in our mailing, which is just an emergency phone number.
Yeah.
I started thinking, boy, all those people on the lake, there's probably 300 homes between the districts.
Yeah.
That getting
Let
that
us know.
magnet to add to their collection,
Please.
if you will.
We do it with the LMA directory as well. So
Okay.
anybody who comes reaches out to us and is like, we want to put it, we did it with the STEAM event as well and all their bags. Like anybody who reaches out to us, we're like, here, please, here's like 200. Same with the brochures. So
Even
we have a
if
lot of
you
them at the
have
school office too.
leftover brochures from 24, I could put them in if,
yeah,
Okay.
depending on, I'll reach out to you guys.
yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions for me? I'm sorry, before we move on.
There's no wine fair this year, right?
No, so when I met with Andrea last week, she said, she's like, I really want to get that. So I know that's been on the agenda. I'm not a wine connoisseur. I don't drink wine at all. But so I know that's still on.
Yeah,
She's-
we're like playing around with the idea of, you know, Culver paint out is biannual. Can we do a wine fair that's like biannual opposite years? We are, I feel, kind of at our max with our current staff of what we can handle event wise, but I think that's the gap that.
I know it's an event that's wanted.
Yeah, it's, everybody asks us all the time about it. I'd love to do it.
I was the one that said, what is a wine fair? So.
It was so popular. It was actually a pretty good revenue builder as well, like unlike, like,
I remember hearing that. That's when.
Yeah.
Person that I know
Yeah.
brought a lot of people.
it's popular.
Yeah, I had no idea what it was, but I've heard a lot of people asking about it. So, and then I emailed the events one. Yeah. Okay, is there a way to get that up there? Yeah, I apologize, I did not get that one printed out, so. Just the one page.
While Karen sorts through that, I can kind of give sort of a broad overview. So for the 2025 event requests, so the total is 18,000. So in comparison, in 2024, that was 16,925. That's $1,075 difference, but that's across events and projects. That's the difference there. So obviously we don't have the Culver paint out. We're trying to get creative at what we want to do with that instead. We noticed the Indiana Festival guides are one of the most popular prints out there. If you go anywhere, you're seeing, they dump those all over all over Indiana and the region even. So we decided we wanted to go ahead and go for that. So we plan to submit a big advertisement for every single key event that we do in Culver. And by key event, I mean those are the events that the visitor center does. So that insert is a half page in the Indiana Festival Guide. We insert it into January. There's a bunch of summer events. They're like, you know what, let's insert in January and people can plan, because they do it on a monthly calendar in their pamphlets. So we're like, hey, let people start thinking about where they want to go with their families early in the year. So that's our plan there for $2,500. And then also that allows for our visitor center staff to attend a conference, the Indiana Festival Guide Conference, and they'll be able to essentially learn and attend workshops about how to make our events a little bit more geared towards tourism and kind of collaborate with others who are doing similar things. So we're excited about that opportunity. I'll go up to event one then, Culver Winter Fest. We're requesting $2,000 to make that happen. You'll see over pretty much like Winterfest, Fall Fest, Holiday Weekend. Those are all similar in that essentially the funding is for banners, yard signs. Andrea's now doing pamphlets for every single event, which is amazing. You're able to physically have something at every event, which I know since I've been in Culver, that's never happened before. So at Fall Fest, you have a pamphlet to tell you what's going on there. And then Culver Lake Fest, as we all know, it's like a beast in itself. There's so many thof that we do there. That includes festival programs. We do mail outs in the pilot newspaper. We insert all of those beautiful, beautiful programs Andrea does. Signage and then posters and advertisements is what that $10,000 includes. And again, the Indiana Festival Guide and a total for $18,000 to support events for print materials and advertising.
So the total between advertising and events is 41,850. Does that sound about right?
Yes, that's right.
Slightly above last year.
Yeah, for the event, but yeah.
Project side stayed the same, the event side was
Yes.
just because of the Indiana Festival Guide.
Yes,
Correct.
exactly.
So that's a new thing.
Yeah.
Because we allocated the paint out to Lake Fest because they needed some more there. I think in that first one that I handed out, there was 5,000 brochures printed last year, 25 yard signs, 150 posters, 2 event banners. So, and I think those were gone.
Yeah, post Lake Fest this year, we did realize we didn't have enough funds to cover all things print materials and advertising for Lake Fest. So, Lake Fest was able to support that, thankfully, but we're really trying to work their budget so that they can be a sustainable event, which we've gotten to that point, but we want to maintain that.
So if we were to move forward with this now, we'd be basically saying we're budgeting this for next
Put that
year
on our spending.
as part of our spending plan.
Yes,
I think makes sense.
yes.
And then does the spending plan then get approved?
December 1st.
Okay, and then that has to get approved on, okay, yeah, just clarifying.
Yeah.
Well, does that,
The,
I mean, but can't we vote on this now and include it in our spending plan? Or do we have to wait to do anything within our spending plan till after?
no, we
those-
could commit, I believe. Yeah,
Yeah.
the spending plan is
It's
a
just
file, is an informational filing with the town council.
Right, they're not approving
Okay.
what,
Got it.
they're approving what our plan is, not what we
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, thank you for.
I think it's the state's way of trying to get redevelopment commissions to budget better
No, it's great, yeah, it's a
and
great,
plan
yeah,
and not be out of control
Yeah.
and make sure the elected officials know what their plan is.
Yeah.
Because a lot of cases you have redevelopment commissions throughout the state.
yeah.
Right.
Spending money on our stuff.
Yeah.
And so the transparency, yeah, we could make that commitment
Okay.
tonight. What timeline do you need us to commit by?
Yeah, so luckily we are at a point where we're a month earlier than we were last year. I think for us, I mean, I think ideally in November again, that worked fine for us last year. I wouldn't push it because we do have to like the festival guide Indiana Festival Guide, for example, like those we need decisions on by, post the November meeting. So if you guys wanted to table it and think on it and make a decision at the November meeting, that would be fine.
Well, we will be voting on a spending plan at our November meeting,
Okay,
November 14th.
okay.
So if it can hold till then,
It can,
I guess
yeah.
I,
Because we did that last year and it worked out.
okay, because I've got a couple of questions for you, that to think about,
Mhm.
with respect to your plan. And if your plan is unchanged come November 14th, we'll, evaluate it based on this. But, so when I think about Lake Fest, for example, that was a volunteer organization. And now it is under the control of the visitor center. Fair statement?
Yes, we will be trying to alleviate that a little bit. So Andrea was the Lake Fest president and the event coordinator in 2024. In 2025, we actually have a Lake Fest president who is a volunteer. And Andrea is the event coordinator. So to support that role, but not to fill that role, because it is a very large undertaking
Right,
for our organization.
right. So it's a separate 501.
Yes, yeah.
And when I think about it, the thing that gets me is way wrong worded. But when I think about all the things that you don't have responsibility for that happen around this town, so I think about
Yeah.
like the adaptive ski clinic. I think about the
Yeah,
fireworks,
triathlon.
the triathlon, right? The corn roast, I don't know, there's probably half a dozen other things, Max Move,
Right.
So, and it's great that you're coordinating those.
Mhm.
Is there an ideal way to do it better, that, that you know of, that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I'm in terms of how we divvy up the responsibilities of events versus support for those events.
I guess what I want to think through is this: the visitor center's job is to bring people into Culver that live more than 50 miles away. So you want to focus on the big stuff, right?
Right.
And And I don't know that the corn roast, anybody drives 50 miles to eat in your corn here,
I
you know, so.
My family comes from 30 miles away, so they're pretty close.
But so I'm not saying, you know, everything, but there are some things, like certainly they come that far for Lake Fest, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, and so if there's
In plein air.
a better way, yeah, plein air, if there's a better way to coordinate, right? And I'm not saying that we can't fund operations, you know, but if there's a better way to do it organizationally or financially, I just really would like to get your
Yeah.
recommendations. So that's one
Yeah.
question.
When you say do it, Marty, are you talking about the coordination between those other events with the visitor center?
Yeah, do it better, right? So we can get more people to come,
Right.
right?
But are you insinuating like moving Lake Fest more towards a volunteer standpoint where Lake Fest or where visitor center supporting it, or are you talking we do more with Lake Fest as an organization? to
Yeah,
support it?
the latter, definitely
Okay,
the latter.
okay, I understand.
See, I've been on the Lake Fest board, I think 4 years, 5. It's very hard to
It's
get
in-
people to volunteer.
And I mean, so I can speak on behalf as a former park director. My experience 4 years ago, I dreaded Lake Fest. It was a disaster. People would be calling me at 6 a.m.
Mhm.
Why isn't the fence open for the awards for the run? Why? And and they're tapping into our resources so much. It was overwhelming for our staff.
Meaning the park.
Yeah, the park department. And it got to a point like 2 years ago where, and they weren't a financially sustainable, they were in the red. You insert Andrea and then she brings them to, they're breaking even, right? And then now they're at the point where they have X amount of dollars to start 2025. Like that's mind blowing, right?
Right.
Never had money to start off with.
Yeah, like
And we have we actually have a president and vice president and
It's-
secretary, yeah.
And she's able to bring in and volunteers aren't scared because they know they're getting the support of a staff member. They're more likely to join, and she motivates them tremendously. It's a scary event without supportive staff.
And we've started planning for 2025 2 months ago. Is when we started.
Right.
Unheard of.
So you're making progress with Lake Fest and you're making progress across a whole bunch of different areas.
Yeah,
And,
right.
you know, we've seen it.
Right.
So what's the next step, right?
Right.
And because there may be some things we could do, you know, by investing
Yeah,
that would make these events more regional in
Yeah.
nature than they are today.
yeah, I agree. Yeah. And I think all the events can get to a point where they're more far reaching even. I mean, Fall
Okay.
Fest, Winter Fest, they're doing a good job, but they could do even better.
Well, help us think through that,
Yeah.
okay? So that's
Yeah.
one
For sure.
question. And then second question is, you know, these big investments like in the park and things like that, we'd like you to weigh in on that too. You know, where do you think our priorities ought to be in making improvements on Main Street, the park, the schools, stuff like that there? I mean, we're trying to attract more people to live here, more people to visit for the events.
Yeah,
Are there certain things you would have us do that would help that?
yeah.
I've said a splash pad for years, but.
Yeah, I mean,
Because I have kids that I don't like watching go into the lake and drown, so, and I have a brother that doesn't do sensory, so I was like, we need a splash pad, but.
I think, yeah, and we can definitely think a little bit more on it. I mean, the first thing that initially comes to my mind is the setup. So we're trying to support our businesses and our events. Like Andrea collaborates with our business owners as much as possible because we need to help out there. I do know like the logistics for setting up an event on Main Street are really difficult. And I don't know. She struggles with the electric, sound. One year we had to run an extension cord to a business to get the band enough voltage
We will be doing that.
yeah, we're doing it this weekend, right? We don't get to bring in the caliber of like bands and radio that we want to vendors because we're limited by electric on Main Street. There's that empty lot on Main Street, for example. Like, can we structure that? Obviously it's privately owned, but we need like a space where these people can set up. I mean, they've been very, very kind to allow us to utilize that space. We just provide insurance, right? We're really appreciative of that. But can we, that's just or even an alternative space where we can have people just exist and set up for events. I think,
Like a staging area.
yeah, and
A pavilion is what comes to
Yeah.
mind.
yeah, and right, like it could turn into a, you know, an outdoor space for the farmer's market. I don't know, right?
Yep.
Like
Ice skating.
drawing people downtown is what we want, to Main Street is what we want to do, because at the end of the day, we want to support our businesses. And if we're drawing people in, right, it's great if they attend our event, but the idea is you attend our, here's an introduction to Culver, here's an introduction to our
Yeah.
businesses. Oh, come live here. That's really the end goal, right?
Mhm.
So,
I went to an outdoor art show in Florida. It was about 3 blocks of each artist had a booth or tent. And I thought, well, everyone's going to be buying the artwork, but if you stepped in a shop, you could barely get around the shop. There were so many people in the stores. And so going to check out the artwork brought people into all these little shops. And I remember telling Grant, I'm like, I got to get out of these 3 blocks. There's so many people. He's like, no, this is what you want in Culver, isn't it? And I was like, oh, duh.
And you see the same thing, I've seen the
Yeah.
same thing in Plymouth when they do their weekend, and they have the little performances on the street. So the shops are full and there's vendors on the street, so.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
I think, yeah,
there's an
definitely space to
excitement to that.
support our events
Mhm.
and electric, you know, all those things that come along with it. I think logistically, it's a nightmare right now. And if we can alleviate that, and hey, maybe more people, volunteers would start doing events if it was a little bit easier to coordinate them logistically.
I know all the events that I help with, it's the same people on every event.
Well, some of those post-mortem where you guys are discussing what went well, what did not go well, be great to get the feedback of, man, we really need electric on Main Street.
Yeah,
And I know at one point that wasn't, we put some electric on the empty lot side.
Mhm.
But it's not enough, obviously, right?
Right.
That was something the town took on. I think Bob helped out with that at some point, like, but that's great feedback and we could cherry pick some of that because it's not that expensive to do some of those things.
right,
You want to have a bit of a plan around all of that and how you,
yeah,
you know, and who ends up paying for the electric? Does it
Right.
become the town expense or?
right, exactly. And to like, yeah, to alleviate, right, like our utilities department does so much to support
Yeah.
us. Like they're bringing out like the electric, I don't know what to call them, the boxes they bring out for us. Like,
Live Oak does that, yeah, for Lake Fest.
yeah, and for Winterfest and Fall Fest, like, I don't know, like we appreciate it. Like I would love a world in which they didn't have to do that.
Mhm.
Like it, you know, like.
And that is an expense to the festival. I don't know.
Not
I don't know what
overextending like our resources just all around, right?
Yeah,
It's-
and the town doesn't really have this big permit fee that says, okay, you've got to pay this to Bob Porter and his crew.
Right, it's not
Yeah.
fair to them. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're right. From a storage standpoint too, I'm sure there would be plenty of things you would want.
yeah,
I know there's a community that does a outdoor Christmas festival every winter, which has always been my dream for Culver, like
Yeah,
the European
yeah.
markets.
yeah.
But you have to store those things.
Yeah,
You have to upkeep them and.
We finally got storage units a year and a half ago. That's when
Yeah.
it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to us. But like we haven't been able to get to this point without, you know, like really pushing for like more funding and getting creative and but seriously, we appreciate your guys' support along the way. I mean, we wouldn't
Well,
be
keep-
here without
keep
it.
dreaming it too. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe we'll see some money come from Marshall County Tourism now that that's all been
Yes.
changed.
Right,
We
right.
did send another request in since the shift in their board membership. We sent it the one we had sent them originally because what we were given was not very close to the amount that we requested. So we reached out to the new board and we submitted a new request. Kind of brought them up to speed because it was communicated to us that they didn't have those documents when we first initially made that request. So yeah, so we're working on it. We're hoping it'd be great to have a day where you just fund us, but
And honestly, Amber, I'm not sure they have access to the funds that were remaining
yeah, that's
because the old board is not sharing.
yeah,
So I don't know how they're gonna get their hands on all of that, but
yeah,
hopefully when they do get their hands on it, that'll be a positive thing
yeah,
that
that'd be great.
the new board can handle.
Yeah,
That's great that you guys are already communicating with the new board.
Yeah, and if we hear anything, we'll be sure to keep you guys posted. We probably should ping them again, just top of their inbox or something, but, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much.
Are we all of the same mind that we can hold their request until the spending plan? Okay. Okay.
Just make sure it gets on the calendar.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be in the plan. I can promise you it'll be in the plan. All right, so, I'm trying to find my agenda because I lost it. I browsed, but it's in this pile somewhere. Thank you. All right. All right, so now we have our, September financial report. And, that was provided to us by Karen, and we all had a chance to look at it. Are there any questions for Karen, or Karen, do you have any comments for us? Pretty, but exactly what you'd expect it to be, so.
Oddly, I opened it this morning and I've already forgotten what I was looking at. I have it open now.
Okay,
I would make a motion to accept and approve the September financial report.
I'll second.
any discussion? If hearing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor of approving the September financial report as presented by Karen, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that's unanimously approved. Great, thank you, Karen. And we have claims, right? And the claims for this month, including the Christmas decorations, we've got also a couple of things from Barnes and Thornburg. I think one related to, oh geez, I remember looking at the invoices. Oh, just right in front of me here. Yeah. Thanks, Karen. Oh, yeah, that's right. Kevin and I talked to them about some financing structures for a Ready project submission. And so we got a bill from them for that. That was actually something I think we talked about and I got your permission to do. So now the bill comes due, and then there were some consults with Barnes and Thornburg relative to the administration of the dunes Ready. So that's that other Barnes and Thornburg. Then we've got some advertising expense in the Lakes magazine by the Visitor Center, and that rounds out claims for September.
I'd make a motion to approve the claims for $10,618 that go from September 28th to October 25th.
I'll second.
Any further discussion or questions? All right, all in favor of approving the September claims as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the claims are approved. Okay,
And don't lose my,
your agenda, which I'm about to hide again.
right there, see.
So let's go to our next presentation. This is, well, let me start by saying this is what I'd like to get out of it. There is an awful lot in what we're about to see. And we could be here a long time with this. What I did is I put together a set of slides. I took everything out of the comp plan, the 2040 plan that had CRC next to it and the responsible parties. And then I added some slides based on the feedback I've gotten so far, which isn't all the feedback certainly that I'm going to get, but feedback that I've gotten from Parks Department, some developers, some other stakeholders. And there's more of that to get. For example, I know I'm going to sit down with some of the people from the academies to talk about what they might have us do, from a priority standpoint. I'd like to drag some of you or all of you along for that discussion once it gets set up, but it's still pending some dates on that. So So there's all of that in there. And I guess the next time we get together, we're going to be voting on this plan. At the end of this presentation is the plan itself in its current form. And what you're going to find is that there's not really a lot to decide between. We don't have to decide between investing in the park or investing in Main Street at this juncture, because that's all rolled up into one category. There is a couple of categories that we do need to make some decisions on, though, if we're going to earmark money for safety and welfare, which is basically, vehicles purchases. We didn't buy any this year. Do we zero that for next year? Or do we put some dollars in there in case, that need comes up? And Karen, we need, your input and advice on that. I think there's one other category where that might, that we have to have that kind of discussion. And then what I'd like to try to get from you is some initial thoughts as to what's missing from, the list, and where you kind of feel we ought to be thinking about making some investments next year, because next year's going to be here pretty soon. It'll be time to start making our bets. So Karen, if you're already there. All right, let's go. Next slide. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Wait, on me or not.
It's always hard to get past the cover slide.
It just doesn't want
The TV doesn't want to read
There we
it.
go.
Okay, so this was the Culver as a destination, and explore opportunities to increase the number of events. And then study the feasibility of adding lodging options, hotel, conference center, RV, campground. Those are both indicated as high priorities. The next slide, arts, culture, education, explore the feasibility of a cultural arts center in the downtown, utilizing the Carnegie Library basement of the high school auditorium or one of the vacant buildings downtown. Create hang banners that celebrate our artistic heritage and integrate our arts related history into a wayfinding sign program in town. For quality of place, conduct site studies, and there were very specific locations that were listed in the plan for doing site studies to support redeveloping new shops, eateries, local businesses. These are also a high priority. The vacant lot at Main Street in Jefferson, 107, 109 Main Street, Lakeshore Drive and Main Street, the car wash, former car wash, Tamarack and 17th and Jefferson and State Road 17, that corridor entrance into town. Quality of place, budget for maintenance, enhancement, expansion for parks. These get kind of particular, but look to maybe construct pocket parks on some vacant land in town. Feasibility of a community center is probably the big ticket item in this list. Quality for people, that's okay. Housing initiatives for entry-level housing. And then professional workspaces in a community center to support the workforce, remote working. I've got a thought on that before, and I'm going to talk about that real quick before we move on. I know the library is studying who's using it currently for remote working, and is in doing their reset. They're going to set aside places, and then they're going to keep the metrics to see how big a demand there is in town for that. And I think that will be instructive for us, and whether or not we want to make that investment, we can utilize what they're helping us learn. Thank you, Karen. So for infrastructure, add traffic calming elements for bicyclists and pedestrians. Add amenities to the trails, lighting, benches, wayfinding. figure out where we need to make our next investments for utilities infrastructure. Create a new town hall and emergency services center. Because this doesn't allow us to do town hall work in an efficient way. Or to adopt a technology we probably should be adopting. And then get the word out on the SURF broadband project. And then for business development and support, the recommendations were an e-hub program, shared workspace. Boy, that keeps coming up across the board. Sustainable options for that e-hub for constructing it, and then a business strategy guide for attracting new businesses to Culver. For business development and support, I think this is slide 2 for that. A mentorship program. Is there a way to lower energy costs, utility costs for small businesses in town? Could we study that? And then potential sources of workforce, create a plan for attracting workers from those sources. I'm not exactly sure I understand that, but that was one of them. Okay, talking to stakeholders, and this, when you see Park, that's Andrea, that's who I talked to so far. She indicated there was a proposal for upgrading the lighting, the audio, and the electric, and that if we did that, that it would actually reduce the cost of producing some of the events in the park. That we need permanent public restrooms there. The visitor center indicated, and this comes from board member, that the event coordination across the various entities that are doing events in town, the township, when I talked to Marlene, I got, we need to fix the intersection issues for the trucks around town, and better lake access for local people and boats. Mike, I don't know if you've got anything for us that you would add to that list. The business owners and Kevin Dante has been very involved in this, and I've been somewhat involved as well. That the business owners on Main Street are saying we really need this revitalization. We won't be able to continue this long term if we don't do something to revitalize this Main Street. And they also say that there's great potential for an entertainment district if we make the right investments, and like the Bennett building, Bennett Construction Building and the theater. Developers, and I've gotten to 2 of them. There's a couple of more I'm asking for input from. Enable the small business support, a stronger voice for Main Street. When you think about what we're investing in, don't forget about that 1017 corridor where the dollar stores are. There is a local business retention and support that is a key program for the County Economic Development Commission, but they don't really do that as well locally as they probably should or could. They just don't have manpower to do it. So who's talking to the cabinet manufacturer? Who's talking to our small businesses to know their problems, what support they need, and how what we can do to help them expand? So a program that would do that. Look at unbuildable lots for establishing pocket parks, and get our projects ready for Ready 3. And then the schools, this came from Karen. She also is a supporter of investing in downtown and business development, investing in the Main Street. Arts and entertainment, working with the visitor center, and working on blighted spaces. And I think that's it. That's what we got. So these are the priorities that were up there before, when we talked about the TIF dollars. And this is kind of, I tried to boil them down to what we might align around as far as priorities go. And at the bottom, I said, well, geez, what's missing? Right, so I don't know how much time you've had to review this. But I'm gonna open it up now and ask you for thoughts and questions, any discussion. Hey, Sean.
So you know how you had that early list, Marty, of some specific locations that came up in the comp plan? One thing I like about the thought of that, of a maybe a study of how you could, because it would go along with the Main Street focus. A lot of those spaces are part of our Main Street or part of our key and commercial corridor. So one of my thoughts was if I could walk from Papa's all the way down to the old Pinder's restaurant in the south end of town that we now own, the town does, the way you can walk probably a good mile stretch or half a mile stretch in Frankenmuth, Michigan, right? Which is a real touristy destination and very activated spaces. And those activated spaces even kind of spread into neighborhoods where the surrounding residents are kind of part of that whole culture. What would I change if I took that little walk in terms of experiencing it as a resident, experiencing it as a visitor, experiencing it as an academy student, community student? Like if we thought about how people experience from Papa's to that location, what would we change? And it goes to establishing that vision that you're talking about. But there are spaces along that walk, the movie theater, the empty lot that Dickie owns on Main Street, the lot that the town now owns. There's these not activated spaces, if you will. And how would we activate them if we could? The bank, certainly one of them. Some of these properties or lots are probably somewhat blighted, like the movie theater and the bank. Like, I'd love to know what everyone's vision for that walk would be, whether you're a resident, all these, if we ask people, take the walk with us and tell us how you want to activate these spaces. Because I think as an economic development role, we could invest in that walk, if you will, which will impact the school, the population, all these sort of things we want to achieve in that comp plan. I love that there's some very specific locations that were listed on that earlier slide. Because I also think about, well, the town owns a property along this corridor. And with the dunes coming in on that far end, we have to think about even our lot, because what could we dream for that space and how we need to fix that intersection. It's not a great intersection from a safety, like even, I don't know. But it would be interesting, Jerry, take that walk as a firefighter and as a full-time resident in the town of Culver who works here and lives here and plays here. And, each one of us might have a different vision of it, but we all would agree that there's certain things on that walk that we would definitely change, right? The movie theater. Potentially the empty lot. And what would, the visitor center folks, they want to add electricity to that walk and sound equipment and certain things. Like if all we did was start with that, I love that list of random places that the comp planning process came up with, because it's like, yeah, we're all thinking about, shouldn't we do something with that? How do we go about that? And if we did have sort of a vision for Papa's to, I'll say Papa's to Pinder's. That's the last thing I remember it as, but I can never remember all the other restaurants that became down there before we got the lot. And in some cases, we do have control of the property, like we own it, or we know if someone wants to do something with it. But I'm just rambling. I'm sorry.
Did Karen Schumann mention on that, the Boys and Girls Club facility that they wanted to build? I thought she said something about a community center type.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that could be used I know she didn't ask for any funds from us.
Yeah, it's partially like community center, partially club. I think it might even have an indoor walking.
I thought she said some kind of sports thing too in there,
Yeah.
but I didn't know if it was gonna be available for community
Yep.
use.
I think that's
Meetings.
the idea where they could potentially, because it's gonna be owned by the school technically, I think. And they have submitted a Lilly grant and a Ready grant for that.
When did they find out on this?
Lilly, I think is anytime. And then, cause there's a project manager working for Lilly. There's two of them in the whole state. And they can pick, they start with one project in the county. Like if you submit 3 and they all you can maximize at 1.5 million of the grant money. So let's say they say, oh, CYC is one that they're ready to go. We'll give them their 500,000 or whatever they applied for. Once they get that one up and going, then you can submit the second one. It's like one at a time. And we're waiting to find out if our first one, and I think the CYC might be the first one on the list. But then Ready is what, December they're telling us?
We're supposed to know now if we get an opportunity to present in November. That word was supposed to come last week, as far as I know. It has not come yet. As of 2 days ago, it hadn't come yet. So it looks like they're at least a week behind.
Yeah, not surprised.
Any other thoughts?
Digging into that
No.
comp plan, Marty.
Well, I really appreciate your thoughts, Jenny, on that papas to pinders. There's something energizing about this. Yeah, papas to pinders. You missed it. You're gonna have to watch the YouTube.
All of it.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
If there were appenders left,
Okay, so here's the plan. This is what we need to vote on next. And it's this simple, right? It's one pager. And it's just how do you allocate it? So I have allocated down to the maximum spending level because I don't anticipate us thinking we're going to spend all that money, but we should include it so we don't have to amend the plan later on if we decide that there's a project that we want to fund. And so the debt service is a given. We're obligated to 80,000 in debt service for next year. I'm going to skip to the next two. Professional expenses and grants and contributions. I put $200,000 across those two categories because I don't know what we're going to need, but I do know that there's a lot of recommendations on study this, study that.
And historically, we,
Put together a feasibility plan for this or that. And so I just put a couple of placeholders in there to help fund that kind of work should we decide to make those priorities. The police fire capital, again, I put a question mark in there. I don't know if we should be allocating money in that category or not. Karen, you got any thoughts for us?
It would be helpful.
Fire truck.
Do you have
Fire truck.
a sense on size for that?
Now we're looking at a new fire truck coming in 2 years. And that $600,000 is the town's commitment to it. And then, yeah, it's 600. And then right after, like 2 years after that, I think there's another truck that they're looking at. And then there's also ambulance in the next couple of years that they need to replace. And then just the general rotation that we have in the police department.
They'd be looking for anything in 2025 then, or would that be?
2025, we'll have this year. Next year, 2025, 2026, there's a squad car. We don't have any specific expenses coming up next year unless you would be willing to with part of the payment for the fire truck. I think some of that comes due next year. So, and the ambulance would be 26 or 27, I believe. So,
So what I hear you describing though is kind of an ongoing commitment because, you know, it looks like there's this and then there's gonna be this and this. And maybe you could help us think through, you know, what that spending plan is and what our part should be in it.
can I make a
Per year.
suggestion?
Yeah.
That maybe, I mean, we're looking at, it's 6:20 right now, we
Yeah.
got 10 minutes
Yeah.
before the next meeting.
Yeah, right.
Maybe you guys schedule a work session and you can sit down and really dig into this. And then, you know, you can talk about this all you want in a work session, and then you can prepare the spending plan, bring it back, and then it's ready for the November 14th meeting.
Yeah,
Rather than, you know, rushing through in a couple of minutes and really not having time to really discuss it and flush it out.
okay, all right, fair enough.
I mean, I'm not trying to kick you out, but
No, I think this is the last
But
slide
get out.
anyway, right?
I don't know.
I think it's the last slide. So we got to the end.
Yeah,
Question on that though, if we just from the format of it. So would that, if we did fire, ambulance, something, could that be under the regular capital expenditures allowed in, you know?
No, I
or it
think we
has
would
be
have to,
separate?
I
we
think
would have
some
to
of that
amend the
stuff
plan.
needs to be broken out
Yeah,
for the state to be happy with it.
And one thing, you can amend the spending plan. Originally, it
about that.
sounded like you weren't going to be able to, but just today, again, it was reiterated, it can be changed. It just has to be reiterated, so. There's some flexibility.
And it sounds like we could come up with an estimated cost of at least the next 4 years of emergency service equipment. So if that looks like, okay, it's 850,000 between fire and EMS, growing police, you're probably talking closer to $1 million over 4 or 5 years. Then we can go, okay, do we want to allocate 200,000 a year each of those years, or do we want to do 100,000 a year? Like, we could figure out or, you know, how much of the town budget do we want to take on?
That's the question. And how does that weigh against some of the other priorities, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I do
Yeah.
think that we need a work session because, you know, it's getting close to the next meeting.
Yeah.
And we still need to sign claims.
Yeah, we do.
Do you guys want to
We do.
figure out a date for a work session?
Let's do that. So the meeting is November 14th. And my availability after November 2nd is very questionable, so it would really be next week,
Maybe.
yeah.
I could actually do next week, myself. In fact, the following week is when I get ugly. Sort of like you, Marie.
Yeah. I'm fairly open next week.
Tuesday I can do.
That's Tuesday, then the 29th. Jerry, how do you look for?
If it's after 5, I can. I'm in Indy until about 4 to 5. Like, I could do 6:30.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sarah?
Yep.
6:30, 29th,
Here, let's see, work session.
to be continued. Public input. Got to talk fast. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I
Oh,
thought Mike
wait.
had something. I had something.
Oh, okay.
He's
Patty.
just waving goodbye.
Please.
Callings, 6 East Lakeshore Drive. I may have missed it because it was so much to read and move so fast and I haven't been involved in. But I think it's wonderful to have it all in one place. I mean, you can take it away, you can put it back, but I've never seen anything so well organized. And Marty, I
Yeah.
congratulate you
Bravo.
on that. Really.
Well,
a lot
thank
of
you.
work.
Yeah, thank you.
And now here's the bad part.
That's a good team, you know.
She always butters you up.
Yeah, yeah.
Mike, his husband, has been talking to people for years. He and Dean and his family have been very proactive with Habitat for Humanities. And Mike just sees these places that would be perfect for a young family with children who need some help, who will use the school, who will be permanent. They will own it. It's such a fabulous program. And I don't know the fellow's name that runs Habitat for Humanity in Plymouth. But he said he's been wanting to come to Culver. He knows he can get people to build it,
Dean
volunteers.
Byers.
He knows, they have their program. But no one's ever donated any land. Would that be anything you could do? Buy a piece of property, tear it down, or if it's empty, buy it and give it to humanity, Habitat to Humanity. To build that home, single family in a single family lot and help in many ways. It brings the community together because all kinds of people, our other daughter, she works every year with just the woman's house and they build just women. But there's all kinds of groups that, and it builds a pride in community.
Mhm.
Because here we are helping this family that really needs help and to be a part of a nice community.
Might be a potential way to deal with blight and
I can't hear you.
might be a potential way to deal with blight and infill as well.
That's what we thought.
Yeah.
Yes, we got part of that. But more and more people are willing to live anywhere. So used to be, you'd be afraid to live here and that, no, it's nice everywhere. Thank you.
We'll add the suggestion. Because I think technically it's doable. Sean, have you seen it? Redevelopment commissions do,
No.
they can buy
land.
would they- or with the Habitat for Humanity connection. Have you seen them do it?
Could be structured that you could.
Thank you.
I was gonna add, I don't have a car today, so I just did a third of the Papa's defenders walk to get here, and it was so nice going down the trail by Marty's house.
We did find out there was, I don't know that Kevin did it, or did you do it? We kind of searched out and there was articles and something. If you are interested, because there's perimeters of how you can do that. They didn't get anybody. So I can say it.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
We did try it, I think during Stellar, the first time in
That's
Culver,
right.
when we did the Culver Stellar plan.
Yeah.
We tried to get some people, there was a gal at one point, but she wasn't qualified and. Yeah,
Entertaining a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.